Good evening and welcome again. I'm not sure what happened with the sound the first time around, but we're going to try it again. It was very strange, but maybe that just needed to rehearse before delivering this. Anyway, it's three dreams here tonight, and they feature jungles, the theater, and naked shopping. The first dream, the dreamer reports that he was airdropped into a South American jungle and had to make his way back to the city. And the dreamer felt confident that he could handle it. And if he behaved somewhat like Tarzan in the jungle, and he would have to navigate the terrain, wild animals, etc. But as he left the jungle, he was certain that he would be captured and imprisoned. But if he played his cards right, he'd be released from jail and he would be able to continue his journey into the city. That's the first dream. The second dream, the dreamer was at watching some kind of play at an event where there were several different activities going on, and sat down near a female friend from his martial arts class and asked who asked him what was going on, and then asked, "Can I sit behind you?" And she replied he replied rather, "I suppose so." And there ends the second dream. The third dream, the dreamer reports that he was waiting in line at a branded chain of car parts stores, and the staff, all of the staff at this place were from the continental Europe, so the mainland Europe, if you will. And the dreamer reports that he was naked and standing at the back of this line waiting to be served, though no one seemed to either notice or pretended they didn't notice that there was anything wrong with him standing there naked, but he felt embarrassed. And there ends the third dream. So what on earth is going on with these three dreams? And there is, let me tell you, there is a lot going on in these dreams. I was able to pull out so much information. In the first dream, the description that the dreamer gives reminds me of these reality TV shows. There's one here in the UK called "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here," where they drop people in a jungle somewhere, and then they have to go through all kinds of different challenges and whatnot, and who's left standing wins. Um, but my question to the dreamer is, what does that actually evoke? What does that mean for the dreamer to be in the jungle? And another question is, what does acting like Tarzan actually mean? Is that swinging through the trees, barely dressed, and having chats with animals? What does that mean? The dreamer reports, of course, that there would be wild animals to be confronted, but doesn't specify. So, what kind of wild animals was he expecting to run into? Or is it just kind of generic, jungle animals? And what do any animals, if they are evoked by this dream, what what animals were they, and what feelings do they bring up for the dreamer? The other thing is it's very particular. It's a South American jungle as opposed to a jungle in Africa or someplace else, or a tropical jungle in the Pacific somewhere. What does that mean for the dreamer? What significance does a South American jungle uh, mean for the dreamer? Now, it's curious that the dreamer says that he would be escape from the blah, 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 escape from the jungle only with the fair amount of certainty that he would be captured by someone or some group of people and put into jail. But if he finessed it the right way, he would get out. Now, who were these unknown assailants and why did they need to put him in jail? And what does that evoke for the dreamer? Having these people overtake him and put him in jail. And what exactly does playing your cards right mean for the dreamer? What does that mean? Does it mean bribing them? Does it mean, whatever? What does that mean for the dreamer to be able to play his cards right, to get out of jail and continue his journey? Now, if his cards are played right and the dreamer expects to return to the city, but there's some doubts around that it's not a done deal. There's still some uncertainty. And the it begs the question, at least for me, is that what kind of jungle was the dreamer actually in? And I don't mean in the sleep, in the dream, but in waking life. What kind of terrain or rough terrain or jungle terrain could the dreamer be struggling with at the moment in waking life, in a metaphorical sense? And it's interesting that you escape from one jail to the next. The jungle of being trapped in the of being jail of being trapped in the jungle, to the physical jail of somebody actually putting them in a jail cell. um is there somewhere in the dreamer's waking life that may feel like being in a jungle or being held captive? And what does city as opposed to jungle represent for the dreamer? And why this certainty that he would be put in jail? I mean, what is that about? Why? We'll leave that for the moment, and we go on to the second dream. And the dreamer is at an event, a particular event, as which is part of a larger group of events, and is watching a play. And the phrase that came up for me was, observing life, or life is art, or art is life. But the implication being that the dreamer is a spectator rather than being a participant. He's watching something unfold. And what does that mean and evoke for the dreamer? Now, an unnamed female friend from the martial arts group asked the dreamer what was going on, perhaps about the play itself, and then asked if she could sit behind him. And he gives an answer, yeah, I guess so. It's okay. And my question here is, could this actually, young woman or woman, represent the inner female of the dreamer, or the anima? Usually, the well, for men, there is an anima, the inner female, just as women have an inner male, or animus. And for the anima for men represents relationship, and connectedness, and perhaps it's um, a call or a reminder to the dreamer to be connected, whether to himself or to others. But what's interesting about this is that this woman asked the dreamer if she can sit behind the dreamer. Now, behind as in out of sight, out of mind, or behind as in I'm there to at your I've got your back. It could be either way, but that's for the dreamer to determine. And his somewhat neutral response of "I guess so," there's uncertainty there, as if you're not sure that whether he wants her there or would prefer she not be there. There seems to be some kind of ambivalence, and I wonder if there's an ambivalence in the dreamer's life as well, um, in waking life, that gives that kind of "I guess so" response, neither fish nor fowl. And that's something perhaps for the dreamer to look at. In the third dream, the dreamer has gone shopping, presumably on foot, because he's buying parts for a car, which would imply that the car perhaps isn't running properly and needs a new part or several new parts. So the dreamer is gone shopping. He's standing at the end of a long, presumably long line, waiting to be served. And he, but he's buck naked, which is interesting. It's but the fact that the dreamer is on foot again. Modes of transport have a tendency to represent our journey through life. Sometimes on foot, sometimes by car, but the implication here is that the car isn't running or isn't running properly because it needs a part. So there's something missing. There's also the implication that this large chain of stores, of car part stores that the dreamer had gone to, and it's ordinary, it's public, it's rather pedestrian, and common. So there's a sense of anonymity there, that it's one store is like another store. So you go to McDonald's virtually anywhere in the world, and you're going to see the same thing. So it's very common. There's not much to distinguish it in that sense. Perhaps there's something there with regard to following the crowd, or blending in with everyone, that is implied here for the dreamer. Now, the car parts store, that's quite interesting actually, because again, here's a mode of transport that doesn't seem perhaps to be running properly, and is in need of one or several parts in order to be able to run right. Um, and there's something there perhaps for the dreamer to look at it. What, in terms of the dreamer's life journey, has parts missing so that it's not running right. Something for the dreamer perhaps to look at. Now, the staff at this store, this car parts store, were from the mainland Europe or continental Europe. And why was that important for the dreamer? What does the significance, of their origins as being from the mainland Europe? And what does that imply or mean for the dreamer? Does it impact the way they give service? Does it impact, the language barrier? What exactly is the issue that it's pointed out quite frank, obviously, that these people were not local; they were from someplace else. Now, finally, we get to the dreamer is actually standing on line, waiting his turn, and he's naked, and everybody's either pretending that everything's fine, or they're perhaps ignoring him, but nobody says anything, and it's like the elephant in the room. Everybody knows it's there, but nobody's saying anything, and just pretending that everything is hunky dory and normal, when it's clearly not. And I wonder if there's somewhere in some area of the dreamer's life that is like that. There's an elephant in the room. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows it's there, but everybody's ignoring it. And that's something perhaps for the dreamer to look at, as well as the only person who was expressing any kind of discomfort was the dreamer himself, rather than any of the people who were standing around, presumably able to see, even though he was at the back of the line, they were able to see that he wasn't wearing any clothing. And there's the implication of, like, to think of the Emperor's New Clothes, the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, where he's parading himself around thinking he's dressed in this wonderful garment, but he has no clothes on. So he's not covered up at all. It's all hanging out there, but he's not seeing it. Finally, try to look at some of the connections here. At first glance, there doesn't seem to be any, but whenever dreams are dreamt in close proximity, whether the same night or within a few days or even a week of one another. They're usually connected in some way. So, taking a look at some of the elements of the dream, there are some connections, though you wouldn't perhaps wouldn't be apparent at first glance. The first is the jungle. And in dream one, so you have the South American jungle. I mean, it could be in any number of several countries because there's a lot of jungle there. There's which is has a connection to the second dream, in that the um, dreamer met up with a fellow martial artist who and they practice capoeira, which is from Brazil. So, what does exactly does South America evoke for the dreamer? Then you have between the contrast between the actual jungle in Dream One and the concrete jungles of Dreams Two and Three. So again, that jungle theme is still carrying through, even though in different scenarios, different types of jungles, different types of animals, but jungles nonetheless. You also have the this contrast of in Dream One of Tarzan. I mean, this natural man who swings through trees and talks to animals and is living a free and natural life, versus the dreamer who is at least in Dream Three, living a very unnatural kind of life, standing naked, waiting in line to be served in a shop. And there's something about the contrast between being very orderly, very civilized, um, but yet wild and free and unfettered. That juxtaposed here between these dreams. The dreamer is, acting in a very orderly, very civilized way, except that he has no clothes on, which is definitely outside of the normal order of things. And I wonder where in the dreamer's life there may be that kind of contrast. It's like pretending that all is normal, yet not normal. So the dreamer is exposed to the outside world, and is feeling out of place. He feels embarrassed, versus the Tarzan persona, who is in harmony with his environment. And it would appear that there's perhaps a dislocation between the dreamer and his world, be it within himself or in relation to the outside world. And that there's a disconnect somehow between natural behavior, what comes naturally, versus civilized behavior, which is what we're taught, be from our parents, our teachers, our preachers, our lawyers, doctors, blah, 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 blah. And so there's this dichotomy between being oneself and being what other people would have us be. So there you have it. Three very interesting, very different dreams, and they could have pulled a lot more information out of them. But I think this is more than enough for the dreamer to be able to take away, to sit down and think about and work through, to see what the deeper message is for the dreamer, and perhaps some pointing the way forward to some solutions. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this time the sound is actually working, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.